And they're both.
Both.
Yeah, A and B.
So what happens if we take the plasma from an O patient and mix it with the red cells of an A patient?
Well, they've got that B, so.
Like that. Fun. That's 1975 fun.
The B's gonna mess it up.
You'll glutamate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say we were to take an A patient and an O patient. Completely remove the plasma. All we have is red cells. What happens if we mix those red cells together?
Nothing?
Nothing. Antigens don't react with one another. Antibodies react with antigens. So keep that in mind. Be able to think your way through this. Because I may tell you, I give you the plasma from a B patient and the cells from an O patient, mix them together, what's going to happen? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work?
It should work. Just can't use the plasma from an
plasma
O
and blood type don't matter.
Huh?
Didn't you? Said the plasma, blood type don't matter, they just put it on there.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
Right?
Plasma very much matters.
Yeah,
Platelets don't matter.
Platelets don't
matter.
matter.
Platelets.
All right. So let's talk about our reagents. That blue bottle, what's in it?
Anti.
It's better. Anti-A. It's an antibody to the A antigen. What cells will that agglutinate?
B?
That'd be B cells,
Yeah.
right?
We already discovered that the A cell has an A antigen. Anti-A will agglutinate A cells.
Anti-B is B.
Don't forget, A B cells have the A antigen. So if I add, what will anti-A agglutinate? The answer is A cells and A B cells. So, I mean, like I said, be able to think your way through that. Antigens, antibodies. Think about what your types contain. And then you may have to stop and think about it. B cells, B antigen has anti-A. This is in the plasma, this is on the cells. That's a big part of your test. That is pretty much first page. Someone who, if they agglutinate with anti-D, what do we call them?
They're positive.
RH positive. For that rhesus monkey that has nothing to do with it. We talked about genetics a little bit. What possible genotypes could a type A person have?
AA and AO.
AA and AO. What possible genotypes could a type O person have?
Just
OO. That's it. Because that is the recessive. Anything else added to it, it will not be type O. What about AB?
just AB.
AB, that's it. There are questions like that where I'll read you one of the questions. A person of type A could have which pairs of genes?
AA.
AA, AO.
What about B?
Hmm?
What about B?
B could be BB or BO.
Boo.
There's a couple of scenarios from which I'm going to give you the blood type reaction and say what type is it.
Okay.
That should be automatic.
Plus
Gotcha.
or minus?
Yeah, plus or minus.
Cool.
You're not going to have an A2 and anti-A1 or anything. It's just normal blood types.
Okay.
Something we discussed as far as antibodies, the different types. In blood bank, we're concerned about IgM and IgG. Which one of those reacts at cold temperatures?
IgM.
IgM. Think about it. Those ABOs react at immediate spin without incubation. They're IgM. IgM reacts in the cold. IgG, you have to incubate. You're going to have add Coombs to see it for the most part. Speaking of Coombs, what is that? What is the green stuff?
Anti-human globulin.
Anti-human globulin. What does that mean?
It's an antibody to an antibody.
Antibody to an antibody. It treats an antibody as an antigen. It sticks to it. I gotta take that question out. We have not covered that. If you read your book, where does Coons come from? Rabbits, predominantly. They can get it from other animals. The predominant is rabbits.
Can't you all, did you
For a
say
long time, they used
mice?
sheep. Then they went to guinea pigs, and now it's rabbits. Just briefly, if you're looking for agglutination, how do you do it?
Shake it?
What do you gotta do first?
Spin
Spin it,
Yeah.
tip it, shake it, dislodge the button, correct?
Yep.
So if I give you, multiple choice on checking for agglutination and three of them are crazy and one of them says something approximating that, that should be a pretty good question. What circumstance would cause a mixed field agglutination, which is very hard to visualize, by the way?
What?
Oh, transfusions.
Transfusions,
Good job.
because they have their red cells, then they got somebody else's red cells that are reacting differently. You end up with a mixed field. In a tube, that's very, very hard to see. Because it's hard to see that, wait a minute, half of that's 3+, but some of that's 1+, and it's really hard to visualize. In gel, it's a little easier because you have a line here and a line here.
Mm-hmm.
Another advantage of gel, by the way. Know what prozone and postzone is. One is antigen excess, one is antibody excess. Know what they are. We've talked about this a little bit. We have not gone in depth in it, but what is a DAT test score?
Antigens?
What we're looking for is we're looking for red cells that already have antibodies attached to it. That's what that test is. We do that in newborn babies to see if there's been a reaction with mother's blood.
So in the DAT, the antigens are on the cell, but in the IAT, they're floating around in the plasma.
That's right. We're trying to get them to stick. That's why it's indirect versus direct. DAT. These antibodies are directly on that red cell. Typical in newborn babies. That's blood type on a baby. It's blood type. The only weird thing about it is it shows back. Why is that a problem?
Because usually
They
they
don't-
don't have backfire.
Yeah, because
It's
there's
irrelevant.
nothing there.
No matter what, even if you do it, even if stuff shows up, it's irrelevant. I gotta take that question out. I got the sugars for the antigens. What's the dominant sugar for type A? What is that terminal sugar? N-acetyl-galactosamine.
Okay.
What's B?
Galactose.
Lactose. What's terminal sugar for the H antigen? Fructose. Who has the H antigen?
Animals?
If you have D, right?
Who has the H?
What blood type has the H antigen?
Oh.
Oh.
Everybody have H?
Well, they all have them, but only.
Everyone.
They don't have
Because you
the
can't
X.
have a blood type without the presence of that H antigen. Because that's what your terminal sugar's added to make you A or B or whatever.
And then if you don't have that, you're that Bombay.
Bingo, you got nothing.
And don't O's just only have the H?
O's, what's special about O's is all they have is the H antigen.
Yeah.
The reason we don't have an anti-H reagent is because it'll glutinate all cells. Because everybody has it in varying amounts. Now O has the most, and AB has the least, but everyone has the H antigen. If you have a blood type, you have the H antigen. If you don't have a blood type, you probably live in India. Alright, let's say you're doing a week D test. At the end of your procedure, your week D tube is negative. Your RH control tube is negative. What should you do next?
You add that.
Add the other cells to make sure.
But as far as your results,
That person is actually truly negative.
exactly, it worked. Now, your week D test is negative. Your RH control is positive.
Not all of them.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly. That RH control has to be negative. Let's say that tube is positive. You repeat it, it's still positive. What possibly could cause that?
Cold, agglutinated.
Angela.
It's positive because their red cells already have antibodies attached to them. That's why it's showing up. When you add that green stuff, it's sticking to these that are already there. So unless you mess something up, which, let's be honest, most of the time that's the case. We repeat it and it works just fine. But if you repeat it a couple of times and it's still that RH control is coming up positive, this is your culprit. That patient has a positive DAT. What two occurrences most often will cause someone to have an antibody?
Transfusion of pregnancy.
Transfusion, pregnancy.
Yep.
Not necessarily childbirth. You don't even have to have a kid yet. You can still do it. Rare. So pregnancy, transfusion. That little chart on the top of one of the pages on the blood banks book that talks about the H antigen, where it goes from greatest to least. Know that chart. I may ask you which one has the greatest amount, type O, which one has the least, A1B. What if I asked you which had more, type A1 or type B?
What page is it?
It's under the ABO chapter. It's on the very top of one of those pages. It's a chart from greatest to least on the amount of H antigen present.
I don't think we went that far.
Who discovered the ABO blood group?
Oh, Wiener.
Wrong. It's Hart.
It
Honestly.
starts with an L.
Landsteiner.
Landsteiner discovered the ABO. That's another question about the H antigen. If you were to have an anti-H, which blood group would react most strongly? Type O. They got the most antigen. If I go to ABI and donate a unit of whole blood, what 4 products could they get out of it?
Plasma.
Platelet cells.
Precipitate.
Bingo. That is your big 4 that you need to know about in blood bank. 4 products typically obtained very easily from a unit of whole blood. FFP, fresh frozen plasma, platelets, red cells, cryo. This one, FFP. Once it's frozen, how long is it good for?
Forever.
For a year?
10 years.
Numbers.
So this is frozen. How are platelets stored?
Warm on the mixer.
Room temperature.
On a forest space.
Room temp. How long are they good for?
23 days?
5 days.
7 days. 5.
What storage conditions for red blood cells?
1 to 6 degrees. 2 to 6 degrees.
Refrigerated.
Oh yeah, it is. Chapter 5.
How long are they good for from the time of draw?
56 days.
45 days.
Based on which anticoagulant they used, the most common one that they use in the blood bags, it's good for 42 days. There are other ones that they can use, but they tend to cause allergic reactions, they can extend that out to 50+ days. The most common one, 42 days. If I ask how long red blood cells are good for from time of draw, you say 42 days. But the honest answer is it does vary a little bit. Storage temperature for cryo.
Frozen?
How long is it good for?
Immediately? Right?
It's frozen. Can't be immediate.
After
That's
the
one of them is indefinite. I mean, 5 years. I don't know. Long time.
Oh, page 101 has that.
I'm not gonna ask you that because honestly, I don't know how long it's good for. I think it's 2 years. But I'm not gonna ask you that.
Okay.
But I might very well ask you, if I ask you anything, it's probably gonna be
She
that.
said 101.
101 is
Or those.
The chart.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you better know.
What page?
Wait, I gotta take a picture. Has another table.
Alright, so for the week D, and for testing Brett for that C antigen, the procedure we did was an IAT. Be able to write that procedure.
What?
IAT.
Are we
Indirect.
gonna assume that we're gonna start just from scratch, like making everything?
If I hand you an unspun purple top tube, perform an IAT on it.
For
So-
3 drops in a tube, add saline, spin, they're gonna take it out, they're gonna squeegee it off, and then you're
Yeah,
gonna.
et cetera, et cetera. The steps are, I think, are still in there on the board. If they're not, I'll go in there and write them before tomorrow. So we'll write that procedure. As far as the genetic inheritance of blood type, those Punnett squares, we would perform one. Because if I tell you, let's say a type O parent and a type AB parent had a child, what would their children be by what percentages?
Okay, so
50% AO and 50% BO. It's AB and then OO, AO and then BO, then AO and then BO.
So 50% A, 50% B.
Exactly.
Yeah.
50% of their kids would be type A, 50% of their kids would be type B.
So it takes L, O, and X.
That,
Or O and A or B. A or B, because the last one. 100% you have that.
I disagree with this number, but I am gonna change this, so if you take a picture, do another one. 1 to 6 degrees is what they're calling refrigerated in your book. In real lab it's 2 to 6, but textbook answer 1 to 6. Know the basic qualifications that you have to meet to be able to donate blood.
Depends on whether you're male or female. You have to be 130 as a female.
Yeah, and a certain height.
Height, weight, hematocrit, hemoglobin.
Now, is it the new hemoglobin or the difference between male and female? Cause it's different now
That's the number I would remember if I was you.
for men.
That's for men.
No, that's for women.
What is the most common cause for error in a blood bank?
Human error.
Yeah.
Clerical errors.
Clear.
You did it correctly and wrote down the wrong answer. Or you wrote down the right answer and entered it in the computer wrong. Or you somebody filled out the patient's armband wrong. Clerical errors is what kills us in the blood bank. Most common cause of error. And it's the most preventable, and yet it still happens. If you had a patient
That's the hemoglobin, right?
who had a normal platelet count, and they had a good stable H&H, but they were bleeding excessively, what product would we give them?
Cryoprecipitate.
Okay.
No.
Platelets.
Platelet.
Platelet count is normal.
I thought you said when somebody was bleeding out.
This would be number one, this would be number two. Both of those are good answers. What about if they're bleeding, but they have a really, really low platelet count?
Platelets.
Platelet count, right? Give them platelets. What about if they're not bleeding and they're anemic?
Red blood cells.
Red blood cells. Or if they're not carrying oxygen very well, red blood cells. Think about what each of these is for. Both of these are for bleeding. This tends to be for extreme bleeding, like when this is not working.
Okay. Sorry.
Usually, even if we're gonna give cryo, we're gonna give them a couple FFPs first.
Right.
And if that don't do the trick, then we might step down to this. This is like the big guns here.
That's the one you said they can just put directly on a wound.
You can actually tear it up and pour it on, and it's like
Glue.
it's like glue.
Right
It
on.
really is. If it wasn't so expensive, I always wanted to take it back and like heave it at someone and just like, and it ain't coming off.
It
Slime.
won't.
Not very well. I mean, it's sticky stuff. You're gonna have to have a good shower, probably two. Okay. You're doing a DAT on a person. When you shake it out, the DAT is negative. This is after incubation in Tues. DAT is negative. You add check cells. Check cells of glutamate 4+. What is your interpretation of this?
Still negative.
The person's actually negative.
Person's actually negative. That means the procedure was good, our washing was good, our green stuff was good and strong. The procedure worked. That's all that means.
It was actually added.
If your DAT is negative, you add the check cells and you shake it out, and it's negative,
You didn't add
You're wrong.
coons.
you need what?
You didn't add coons.
Most of the time you didn't add coons, or your washing was inadequate. If you added the green stuff, there was enough protein and antibodies in there to deactivate it. Basically, that is no good. You gotta back up and do it again. I would probably add a washing step if I had to do it again. Same question I asked yesterday. What are the RH antigens that we discussed?
C.
D. Little C.
Little c, oh wait,
Big E. Little E. And no little d. Don't exist but it's placeholder.
Yeah, some people use it as a placeholder. And honestly, it may exist. We have no evidence that it exists. If someone were to have an antibody to any of these, is that naturally occurring? Is that something that can occur by nature?
no.
No. Pregnancy, transfusion, they are not naturally occurring antibodies. Now the ABOs are naturally occurring. Those are normal, these are not. Of these, which is the most immunogenic? Which is has the most potential for huge problems?
D.
That's why we do that week D testing mothers and babies, cause if there's, like, if things are really gonna go sideways, if somebody's gonna die out of this,
Couldn't be-
that's the biggie.
Okay.
That is as bad as giving someone ABO incompatible blood. If, Stephanie's over here, no, never mind, she ain't gonna name it, Trish should name it. If we were to give Trish a unit of blood, how much would it raise her hematocrit?
10 points for every.
Let's say right now her hematocrit is sitting at 25%.
Like
We give her a
3.
unit of blood, what should it go up to?
28.
28%. A unit of blood will typically raise the hematocrit 3%, which means one's not enough for Trish. Trish needs about 4 more. How many would 4 more be?
Hematocrit.
That'll get you up to 40. If we gave you 4 more, you'd be good. Hematocrit typically raised 3% by a unit of blood.
By 3%.
3%.
Instead of whole blood or packed cells?
The pack cells. Who gets Rogan?
Moms.
Probably
Moms.
negative.
Negative moms.
Yes. This has to be negative. Why would you not give an RH positive mother Rogan?
Because she doesn't need it. She already
You
has.
should have needed number 1.
She
Number
already.
2, it's an anti-D. It's going to agglutinate her own cells. So not only does she not need it, we're going to cause harm if she's RH positive and we give it. It's bad enough to give something to somebody that's not needed, but to give something to somebody that's going to cause harm is even worse. Oh, y'all are gonna love that question. That is fantastic. I ain't gonna get you in.
Oh.
Another procedure to write out. This time, starting from me handing you a tube of whole blood, do it tight with interpretation. Like if I tell you I hand you a purple top tube, unspun, everything, give me the procedure and the reactions and interpretations for a person who is type A.
Okay, we can do that.
I mean, you should know that like back of your hand now. You already know what the reactions are gonna be and everything. This is something you will not see out of me very often. Don't get used to it. There's a bonus on this test. It's always a plus. Know the tests that are performed on donor blood before it goes to the hospital. What are some of them?
HIV,
ABO.
hepatitis B.
That's the first one.
RH.
Standard
Chagas
test
disease.
and,
Hepatitis, what else?
Chagas disease.
They don't test it for Sjogren's disease.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't. Not maybe I.
Yes, they do. First time donors, they do.
First time donors, they test for Sjogren's now?
Chagas.
Sjogren's.
Chagas.
Totally, I thought you were saying Sjogren's.
I don't even know what that is.
That's an autoimmune disease.
No, Chagas disease.
We got 3. What else we got?
Chagas.
Here's the newest one.
Chagas.
Zika
virus.
West Nile.
West Nile. That's big. That one came about in the last 10, 12 years, I think.
Ebola.
Okay.
Back down.
Any others?
Chagas
Hey,
but they did.
So if Hailey puts Chagas on there.
Basically, you know what her answer's gonna be.
I have no idea what you said.
some, but not all, tested for CMV, because we gotta have a few CMV negative units for those babies if we need it.
Something about that.
Any others?
Sure there are.
Do you do a week D on them?
If they're negative,
Is that what you just said?
yeah. Maybe they get a DU. There are more. There's a whole list on your book.
How many are you gonna require to write out for y'all of them in the book or?
5 to 7.
Does ABO and the RH count as one or two?
The last bonus is,
Haley?
Does the ABO and RH count as one or two?
the last part of the bonus is Fisher Race to Viner terminology translation.
Yes.
So we just,
Etc.
so just knowing that chart,
If I give you one, you give me the other, and that's worth some bonus points.
okay.
But if we don't answer it,
If you don't answer, they don't count against you,
alright, cool.
Thank God.
because I don't like this any more than you do.
Yeah,
But
'cause
if you know some of them, it might help you out a little bit.
Yes, sir.
yeah, 'cause to be honest, like that whole lecture, I had no idea what was going on for that whole lecture.
Same.
I just sat there looking blankly. I'm just like, what do you need to talk
You
about?
sit there, you sit there looking like you're.
I know.
There are a total
Glad
of,
you're doing that Monday.
Not counting the bonus. there are 47 questions.
Uh-huh.
There is, let's see, is there any fill in the blank?
Please no. I can't decipher if they're true or false.
You're funny, man.
There are a couple, not many, it's mainly multiple choice.
True and false?
No, it's mainly
Fill in the
multiple choice. There's
blank.
a couple of fill in the
Okay,
blanks.
I'm cool with that, man.
Okay,
There's 6 true false,
Shit, I
then you
hate
have a couple of procedures to write out.
Okay,
IET and a
No,
blood
I'm not
type.
good with that.
okay.
But
And
I'm
you-
telling you for
What?
test,
You like part you
chances,
said?
Writing,
fill in the blank crazy on the micro test. And I was not happy about it.
Expect them all to be similar to that one.
Oh.
I was skipping because I was like, what is this? I'm used to like having like
So yeah, you gotta write a couple procedures, a couple of fill in the blanks, predominantly multiple choice, true, false. And you've even got bonus on this test. Which is exceedingly
Thank you.
rare around here.
is that it? Are we done?
What day is this test? The 24th?
Tuesday,
Tuesday, the 24th.
I ain't got my glasses on right now.
And then our practical is Thursday, the 26th.
Tuesday, stuff.
Yeah, the first 3, I didn't know.
Alright. Why does it keep stopping?
I was going to I didn't know the